Good day, everyone. This is Jeeves for Gamers Hub at Intel Pack for DreamHack. This time I've got another interview with Riot Executive. Aaron, you are a community specialist.
Yes, that's right.
So can you explain in a nutshell what your job is at Riot?
So being a community specialist is a little bit of a difficult role to describe. We kind of change from week to week depending on what our current projects are. So over the past couple of weeks, we've been working to the run-up of the Nordic Open. So it's been a lot of planning tournaments, kind of coordinating with players, getting their flights booked for coming out to the live event. But then before that, it was a lot of adjudicating tournaments and like helping players get into their tournament lobbies. But other things that we can do ranges from, for example, planning like big events where we have like booths and like we're doing like cosplay activation, or even things like writing messages to tell players about upcoming features or champions in our games. So it really varies from week to week on what we do.
So it basically means you need to have a lot of knowledge about pretty much anything in order to do these things, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much like kind of connecting the players in our community with our games. So having a really strong knowledge of League of Legends is absolutely essential on our team.
Okay, so this weekend, of course, here at DreamHack we had the Nordic Open, so the Scandinavian tournament for League of Legends. So what is actually the deciding factor of creating such a tournament? Because we had the Four Nations before, of course, and now it is the Nordic Open. Like, what is actually the decision that you make? Like, okay, let's do this region.
Yeah, so we just came off the back of running Four Nations earlier in December, and it was a really exciting event, and we wanted to do something like that similar again in the future. And the Nordics is definitely a region that we've wanted to do something more in for a long time. So it was just kind of a great idea of thinking, well, the Four Nations was kind of like a good crossover event that bridges the amateur kind of tournament and competitive scene with like kind of coming up to those like players that are aspiring to want to be in things like Challenger Series. And we thought we could put on a really cool show of people, because people love to watch League of Legends, and we could kind of combine that with something really cool and unique for the Nordic regions.
Okay, is it also based on like professional players and amateur players, like how close they are on level, or is it just something different when it comes to choosing a region?
So we've actually been doing tournaments in regions all over Europe. We actually recently launched a program called Battlegrounds, and we've done similar tournaments like this in Greece, in Poland, in Germany, and in most of the other countries. However, doing the Nordics has actually been a little bit tricky because the player base is so spread across all these different countries. We also have players split across two different servers. So we have a lot of players on EU West and a lot of players on EU and E. And because of the technical requirements of how games are set up, you can't actually have players from EU West play against players on EU and E because those two servers are separated from each other. So doing something for the Nordics meant that it needed a special touch. We had to arrange to have two separate tournaments on two separate servers and then find a way to bring those two servers together so we could truly test who was the best of each region. So that's why we decided to run the Nordic Open as kind of a special standalone event, because that way we could kind of get over those technical restrictions.
Okay, great. So now we are from the Netherlands, so we are in the Benelux region,
Yeah.
right? Is there any type of plans that might involve a Benelux tournament?
I'm not aware of anything for the Netherlands yet, but it is a region that I'm very fond of. A lot of my close friends come from the Netherlands, so I really hope that something like that could happen in the future. I know that the Netherlands players are super, super passionate, so I would love to be able to do something like that. Yeah.
So basically, is there anything to Riot that a specific point in order to start a Benelux tournament? Like, yes, this is it. Now we do a Benelux tournament.
Well, now that we've branched into doing some tournaments in the Nordics, we certainly hope that we can continue growing and continue doing more tournaments across the rest of Europe.
Okay, so this Nordic Open tournament, it was held at DreamHack here in Sweden. So what made you choose to do it on DreamHack and not do a separate tournament on Riot's own?
So the finals of the Nordic Open were kind of lining up in the yearly schedule of being around this time anyway. And DreamHack is such an amazing event. It's not only is it kind of like the pinnacle of one of the largest LAN events in the Nordics, but it's also a really wonderful celebration of gaming. And we thought that it would be a really amazing opportunity to get to kind of work in collaboration with DreamHack and have the event held here.
Great, great. So a lot of people might be thinking like, well, being an executive like might be a very, very interesting thing. Like, did you do any type of study in order to be able to apply for Riot?
No, actually, one of the cool things about Riot is that they hire people based on kind of like a lot of it is like your passion for League of Legends. So my kind of educational background has actually got nothing relevant towards my job role. It was purely my volunteer experience. So before I joined Riot, I used to volunteer a lot, actually at events not too dissimilar from DreamHack, where I would help run tournaments, I'd help run cosplay competitions, and through that kind of wealth of experience of getting to know like what it's like and what you need to know to be able to run these things, I was able to kind of talk about that on my CV and in my interviews, and that was luckily what they were looking for at the time.
So how did you get in touch for the first time with these types of events?
Oh good gosh. So I have been going to conventions since I was about 11 years old, and around 2005 or so, I started volunteering to help run cosplay events. So I would help like run maybe like the masquerades or parades, or I would like run a workshop and teach new cosplayers on like how to make costumes. And from that, I eventually kind of worked my way up into helping out with esports tournaments. And then from there, I was actually hosting an esports tournament roughly a year and a half ago now. And some representatives from Riot were there. In fact, actually, my manager was there, well, my now manager. And we spoke after the tournament, and we swapped details. And then later, did I know I was in an interview? So, yeah.
Okay, great. So to wrap this interview up, do you have any piece of advice for people that try or want to get into Riot and being an executive? Like, where should they start?
I think just being really true to yourself and being really passionate about League of Legends. I'd say one piece of advice I've learned, not just about for Riot, but for life in general, is don't wait around for people to give you an opportunity. You really need to work hard for it and make your opportunities yourself. So don't just think like, oh, maybe one day someone will notice me. Like, you need to go out there and like work hard, and it should pay off in the end.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Aaron, for taking your time in order to do this interview. So guys, this was Jeeves for Games.app, Intel Pack for DreamHack. Make sure to check more videos out of more interview and coverage at DreamHack.